The emergency signal came through at 3 in the morning and woke up with her heart already racing. She had been on 4 for 3 years now, and she knew every creature on this frontier world. But this signal was different. It came from the northern mountains, from the territory that belonged to the. They were magnificent and terrifying. They looked like the dragons from old Earth stories, with massive wings and scales that shimmered like metal. They could breathe plasma fire hot enough to melt stone. They were proud and ancient, and they had refused all contact with humans since the colony was established. The colonists had learned to stay away from their territory. They made it very clear that visitors were not welcome. But this signal was a distress call. Something was very wrong. Climbed out of bed and pulled on her field suit. Her partner Danny Cole was already awake, sitting at his computer terminal with a cup of coffee in his hand. He looked at her with concern in his eyes. "You are not thinking about going up there," he said. It was not a question. He knew her too well. "Something is wrong," said. "That distress signal is coming from a. They never call for help. Never." Danny shook his head. "They hate us. They will kill you before you even land." "Maybe," said, "but I have to try." She took a small shuttle from the research station and flew north toward the mountains. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Below her, the forests of 4 stretched out like a green ocean. It was a beautiful world, full of life and wonder. Had fallen in love with it the moment she arrived. The mountains rose up ahead of her, their peaks covered in snow. She followed the distress signal to a cliffside high above the tree line. What she found there made her blood run cold. A female lay on the rocks, her massive body twisted in pain. Her wings were shredded, torn apart by plasma fire. Blood pooled beneath her, dark and thick. Around her, the remains of a nest smoldered. The eggs were gone. Landed her shuttle and stepped out slowly. They saw her and snarled, baring teeth as long as knives. Fire flickered in her throat, ready to burn this human intruder to ash. "I am not here to hurt you," said. She raised her hands, showing that they were empty. "I heard your distress call. I came to help." They did not attack, but she did not relax either. Her golden eyes watched with suspicion and pain. Activated her translator device, a small machine that could interpret the sounds and gestures of alien species. It was not perfect, but it was enough. The spoke and the translator turned her words into something could understand. "Poachers. They came in the night. They took my children." Felt her heart break. She had studied them from a distance for years. She knew they mated for life and cared for their young with fierce devotion. To lose her eggs must be agony beyond words. "How many eggs?" asked. "3," they said. "3 children. They will die without warmth. They need heat that only it can give, or they will die." "How long do they have?" 2 days, maybe less." Looked at the wounded creature before her. There was too injured to fly, too weak to hunt down the poachers herself. She was helpless, and her children were in the hands of criminals who saw them only as valuable cargo to be sold to the highest bidder. "What is your name?" asked. They seemed surprised by the question. Perhaps she had not expected a human to care. She said, "My name is. I am going to find your eggs and bring them back to you." Stared at her. "You are small, you are weak. The poachers have weapons and ships. You will fail." "Maybe," said, "but I am going to try anyway." She contacted Danny on her communicator. "Danny, I need you to prepare the emergency incubation chambers at the station, the ones we use for reptile species. Set them to the highest heat setting." "What is going on up there?" Danny asked. "Poachers stole 3 eggs. The mother is injured. I am going after them." There was silence on the other end. Then Danny said, "That is insane. You cannot do this alone." "I do not have a choice," said. "These eggs will die in less than 2 days. By the time the colonial authorities organize a rescue mission, it will be too late. I have to go now." She turned back to. There was watching her with something new in her eyes. It was not trust, not yet, but it was no longer pure hostility. "Why would you do this?" asked. "We have never been kind to your people. We have driven you away, threatened you, refused to speak with you. Why would you risk your life for my children?" Thought about the question. It was a fair one. They had never shown humans anything but contempt. By all logic should walk away and let nature take its course. But she could not. She looked at the desperation and grief in those golden eyes, and she saw something that went beyond species or territory. She saw a mother who had lost her children. "Because it is the right thing to do," said. "Because your children deserve a chance to live. Because I would want someone to help me if I were in your place." Was quiet for a long moment. Then she lowered her head, a gesture of respect that had never seen a make to a human. "Go," said, "find my children, and know that if you succeed, I will owe you a debt that can never be repaid." Nodded and climbed back into her shuttle. She tracked the energy signature of the poacher's ship, heading south toward an abandoned mining facility on the other side of the continent. She did not know what she would find there. She did not know if she could succeed against armed criminals. But she had made a promise, and always kept her promises. As she flew south, she thought about what she was doing. She was one person, a scientist with no combat training, going up against dangerous criminals. The odds were against her. Common sense told her to turn back and let the authorities handle it. But somewhere out there, 3 eggs were getting colder by the minute. 3 lives that had not even begun yet were fatting away. And a mother was lying wounded on a cliff, waiting for a miracle. Push the shuttle to go faster. She would be that miracle, or she would die trying. Flew south for 4 hours, tracking the energy signature of the poacher's ship across the vast wilderness of 4. Danny stayed in contact with her the whole way, his voice a steady comfort in her ear as she pushed deeper into unknown territory. "I found something," Danny said. "I hacked into the black market communication channels. The poachers are a crew of 4, led by a man named. He is wanted on 12 different worlds for trafficking in rare species. He sells eggs, live specimens, body parts, anything that will make him money." Felt her jaw tighten. She had heard of men like. They saw living creatures as nothing more than products to be sold. They did not care about the pain they caused or the lives they destroyed. "Where are they heading?" she asked. "An abandoned mining facility about 200 kilometers south of your current position. It looks like they are waiting for a buyer. Eggs are worth a fortune on the black market. Some collectors will pay millions for them." "Then I need to get there before the buyer does." "Please be careful. These men are dangerous. They will kill you without thinking twice." "I know," said, "but I made a promise." She landed her shuttle 3 kilometers from the mining facility, hiding it in a dense grove of trees. From there, she went on foot, moving carefully through the forest. She was not a soldier, but she had spent years studying dangerous animals. She knew how to move quietly, how to stay hidden, how to watch and wait. The mining facility was old and rusted, abandoned decades ago when the ore ran out. It sat in a valley surrounded by cliffs, with only one road leading in and out. Could see the poacher's ship parked near the main building, a sleek vessel designed for speed and stealth. She pulled out her scanner and modified it to detect pheromones. She had learned from her research that eggs released a specific scent when they were stressed or in danger. If she could pick up that scent, she could find the eggs without having to search the entire facility. The scanner beeped. The eggs were in the main building on the lower level. Studied the facility from her hiding spot, looking for a way in. The front entrance was guarded, but she spotted an old ventilation shaft on the side of the building. It was small and rusty, but she thought she could fit through it. Meanwhile, back at the cliffside, refused to let the colonial authorities treat her wounds. A medical team had arrived along with the colony administrator, a woman named Helen Park, but would not let them near her. "We are trying to help you," Helen said through her own translator device. "Your injuries are severe. If we do not treat them, you could die." I do not want your help, growled. I want my children. We have sent a report to the Colonial Security Force. They will organize a rescue mission. How long? Helen hesitated. A day, maybe two. They need to gather a team and get approval from headquarters. Let out a sound that was something between a roar and a sob. My children will be dead by then. The human female who was here, the one called, she promised to bring them back. Where is she? She went after the poachers alone, Helen said. It was reckless and against protocol. She is just one person. She kept her word, said. She made a promise and she went to keep it. That is more than any of you have done. Helen did not know what to say. She watched the wounded with a mixture of pity and frustration. She could not understand why this creature would put her faith in a single human scientist when the full resources of the colony were being offered. But Helen did not understand the way did. She did not know that a promise was sacred. It was more valuable than gold or power or life itself. A promise made was a promise kept, no matter the cost. Crawled through the ventilation shaft, moving slowly to avoid making noise. The metal was cold against her hands and knees, and the space was so tight she could barely breathe. But she kept going, following the signal from her scanner. She reached a grate that looked down into a storage room. Below her, she could see stacks of cargo containers and old mining equipment. And in the corner, sitting on a metal table, were 3 eggs. They were beautiful, each one about the size of a human head, with shells that shimmered in shades of gold and copper. But even from here could see that something was wrong. The shells were dull, and tiny cracks were beginning to form. They were too cold. The eggs were dying. Carefully removed the grate and lowered herself into the room. She moved toward the eggs, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to get them out of here, had to get them somewhere warm. Every minute that passed was bringing them closer to death. She reached the table and touched one of the eggs gently. It was cold, far too cold. She could feel the life inside it fatting, the tiny creature within struggling to survive. She had to hurry. She pulled out a thermal blanket from her pack and wrapped it around the eggs. It was not enough to save them, but it might buy her some time. She loaded the eggs into her pack as carefully as she could, treating them like the precious lives they were. Then she heard footsteps. She ducked behind a stack of containers just as the door opened. A man walked in, tall and broad-shouldered with a scar running down his face. He moved with the casual confidence of someone who was used to violence. This had to be. Check the eggs, he said to someone behind him. The buyer will be here in 6 hours. I want them in perfect condition. Another man walked past his hiding spot, so close she could have reached out and touched him. He went to the table where the eggs had been and stopped. He said, his voice tight, "The eggs are gone." Did not wait to hear more. She ran for the ventilation shaft, but she was not fast enough. An alarm blared through the facility, red lights flashing everywhere. She heard shouts and running footsteps. She scrambled up into the shaft, but before she could pull herself all the way in, a hand grabbed her ankle and yanked her back down. She fell hard onto the concrete floor, the pack with the eggs clutched tight against her chest. Stood over her, a plasma pistol in his hand. He looked down at her with cold amusement. "Well," he said, "what do we have here?" Lay on the cold floor of the storage room with 3 of his men standing around her. Himself crouched down and pulled the pack from her arms. He opened it and looked at the eggs inside, then back at her. "A scientist," he said, reading the identification badge on her suit. "You came all this way alone for some lizard eggs." "They are not lizard eggs," said. "They are children, and their mother wants them back." Laughed. It was not a nice sound. "Their mother is probably dead by now. We hit her pretty hard, and even if she survived, she cannot fly, she cannot hunt, she is no threat to us." "You do not know said. "They have memories that last centuries. They never forget. They never forgive. You could run to the other side of the galaxy and would still find you. She would spend the rest of her life hunting you down. One of his men shifted nervously. "Boss, maybe we should just kill the eggs and get out of here. This job is getting complicated." "Shut up," said. "These eggs are worth 3 million credits each. I'm not throwing away 9 million credits because you are scared of an overgrown lizard." Saw her chance. She could see the fear in the eyes of his crew. They were criminals, but they were not stupid. They knew what it could do. "Have you ever seen a hunt?" asked, keeping her voice calm. "I have. I have studied them for 3 years. They can track a scent across 1,000 kilometers. Their fire burns hotter than a plasma cannon, and they are patient. So patient. They will wait for days, weeks, months until the perfect moment, and then they strike." "Enough," said. He pressed his pistol against forehead. "You talk too much." "Wait," one of the crew members said. His name tag read Peters. He was young, maybe 25, with nervous eyes. "What if she is right? What if that thing comes after us?" "It cannot fly," said. "It is stuck on that mountain." "But what if it heals? What if it has friends? I have heard stories about They say they used to rule this whole sector of the galaxy. They say they destroyed entire fleets." "Stories," said. "Myths, fairy tales." "Are they?" asked. "I have seen their ruins. I have found evidence of their old empire. They were traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. They chose to retreat from the galaxy, but that does not mean they are weak. It means they are tired of violence. But if you threaten their children, they will remember how to be violent again." His hand trembled slightly. Saw it and knew she was getting to him. He was a greedy man, but he was also a survivor. Survivors knew when to cut their losses and run. But before she could press her advantage, Danny's voice came through her earpiece. "I have disabled the facility's power grid. Get ready." The lights went out. The storage room plunged into darkness, moved on instinct, rolling away from and scrambling to her feet. She grabbed her pack with the eggs and ran. Behind her, she heard shouts and the sound of plasma fire, but the shots went wild in the darkness. She knew this building better than they did. She had studied the blueprints on her way here, memorized every corridor and exit. She ran through the darkness like a ghost, her footsteps silent on the concrete floor. She reached a side door and burst out into the night. The stars were bright overhead, and 2 of the planet's 3 moons hung in the sky. She ran for the forest, clutching the eggs against her chest. But was faster than she expected. She heard him behind her, his heavy boots pounding on the ground. He tackled her from behind, and they both went down hard. The pack flew from her arms and landed in the grass a few meters away. Pinned her to the ground, his face twisted with rage. "You stupid woman," he snarled. "Do you know how much trouble you have caused me?" Struggled, but he was too strong. She felt his hands close around her throat, squeezing tight. Stars began to dance in her vision. This was it, she thought. This was how she would die. Alone in the dark, so close to saving those eggs but not close enough. Then she heard it, a sound like thunder but deeper, a sound that shook the ground and rattled her bones. Heard it too. He released her throat and looked up, his face going pale. Came down from the sky like a meteor. She should not have been able to fly. Her wings were shredded, her body broken. But she flew anyway, powered by something stronger than muscle and bone. She flew on rage and love and desperation. She flew because her children were in danger, and nothing in the universe was going to stop her from reaching them. She crashed into the clearing with a roar that echoed across the mountains. Fire erupted from her jaws, turning the night into day. Screamed and ran, and his crew scattered like frightened insects. Crawled toward the pack with the eggs. She gathered them in her arms and held them close. When she looked up, was standing over her, her massive body blocking out the stars. Those golden eyes looked down at, and in them saw something she had never seen before. Gratitude. "You came," said through the translator. "You kept your promise." "I told you I would," whispered. Her throat hurt where it had choked her and her whole body ached, but she was alive and the eggs were safe. Lowered her great head and touched her snout to his forehead. It was a gesture of trust, of bond, of family. In that moment, something changed between humans and something that had been broken for 3 years began to heal. "We need to go," said. "The eggs are cold, they need warmth." Looked at her children and her eyes filled with pain. "Can you save them?" "I do not know," admitted, "but I am going to try." She contacted Danny. "I have the eggs. I need emergency medical transport now." "Already on the way," Danny said. "Helen Park authorized it when she saw the takeoff. I think you scared her." Almost laughed. "Scared her? I am just along for the ride." She looked up at the wounded, at this ancient and proud creature who had crossed half a continent on broken wings to save her children. In that moment, understood something important about they were not so different from humans after all. They loved their children. They kept their promises. They fought for what mattered, even when the odds were impossible. The transport shuttle appeared in the sky, its lights cutting through the darkness. Help was coming. But as held the cold eggs in her arms, she knew the hardest part was still ahead. The eggs had been without proper heat for too long. Some of them might not survive. But she had made a promise, and she was going to keep it no matter what. The transport shuttle landed in the clearing, and a medical team rushed out to help. Handed the eggs to a technician named Laura, who placed them immediately into portable incubation units. The units glowed with heat, wrapping the eggs in warmth that might save their lives. Watched every movement with intense eyes. She was barely standing, her wounds bleeding freely, but she refused to look away from her children. When one of the medics tried to approach her with a healing kit, she growled a warning. "Let me," said. She took the kit and walked slowly toward. They did not growl at her. She stood still and let apply the emergency bandages to her torn wings. "This will not heal you completely," said, "but it will stop the bleeding. When we get back to the station, we can do more." "My children," said, "will they live?" Looked at the incubation units. The readouts showed that all 3 eggs were still viable, but barely. One of them was weaker than the others, its life signs flickering like a candle in the wind. "I do not know," said honestly. "We will do everything we can." They flew back to the research station as fast as the shuttle could go. Danny was waiting for them when they arrived, along with Helen Park and half the colony's medical staff. They had prepared a special room for the eggs, with heating lamps and monitoring equipment, and everything it asked for. Was too large to fit inside the building, so they set up the incubation equipment outside, in a courtyard where she could watch. She lay down on the grass, her broken body finally giving in to exhaustion, but her eyes never left the eggs. Worked through the night. She checked temperatures and adjusted settings and monitored life signs. Danny brought her coffee and food, but she barely touched them. All her attention was focused on those 3 eggs. As dawn approached, the weakest egg began to fail. Its life signs dropped, and no matter what did, she could not stabilize them. She tried everything she knew, every technique she had learned in her years but it was not enough. The egg went dark, the life inside it faded away. Stood there staring at the dead egg and felt tears running down her face. She had failed. She had promised to save children, and she had failed one of them. Made a sound that would never forget. It was a keening wail, a cry of grief that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. It echoed across the colony and into the mountains beyond. Birds flew from the trees, and animals in the forest fell silent. "I am sorry," whispered. "I am so sorry." Did not answer. She just lay there, her great body shaking with sobs, mourning the child she would never know. But there was no time to grieve. The other 2 eggs were still alive, and they needed attention. Wiped her tears and went back to work. She could mourn later. Right now, she had a job to do. The hours passed slowly. Adjusted temperatures, monitored vital signs, and talked to the eggs like they could hear her. She told them about their mother, about how brave she was, about how far she had traveled to save them. She told them about the mountains where they would grow up, about the skis they would fly through, about the life that was waiting for them. And then, as the afternoon sun reached its peak, the first egg began to hatch. A tiny crack appeared on the surface, then another, held her breath as the shell broke apart piece by piece, and then a small head emerged, covered in scales that shimmered like copper. The hatchling blinked its golden eyes and let out a tiny squeak, lifted her head, and for the first time since the egg died, something like hope appeared in her eyes. She reached out with her snout and touched her child gently, making soft sounds that the translator could not interpret. They were sounds of love, of welcome, of family. The hatchling was no bigger than a house cat, with wings that were still wet and crumpled. It stumbled toward its mother, drawn by instinct, and curled her body around it protectively. "One down," Danny said quietly. "One to go." Turn to the last egg. It was the smallest of the three, and it had been the coldest when she found it. Its life signs were stable but weak. She did not know if it would have the strength to break through its shell. For hours, nothing happened. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. The first hatchling was nursing, drinking heat from its mother's body, but the second egg remained still and silent. "Come on," whispered. "You can do this. Your mother is waiting for you. Your sibling is waiting for you. You have a whole life ahead of you, please." A tiny crack appeared. His heart leaped. She watched as the crack spread slowly, painfully slowly. The hatchling inside was struggling, fighting with everything it had to break free. But the shell was thick and the creature was weak. Without thinking, reached out. She placed her hands on the egg and began to carefully pull away pieces of the shell. Tensed, her eyes fixed on his hands. One wrong move, one moment of carelessness, and she could hurt the hatchling inside. But was gentle. She had spent her whole career handling fragile creatures, and she treated this egg like the precious thing it was. Piece by piece, she helped break away the shell, creating an opening for the hatchling to emerge. Finally, the second hatchling tumbled out into the world. It was smaller than its sibling, and its scales were a paler shade of copper. But it was alive. It was breathing. It was real. Let out a sound that was something between a roar and a cry of joy. She gathered both her children close to her, wrapping them in her warmth, protecting them with her broken body. Stepped back and let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. Her legs gave out beneath her, and she sat down hard on the grass. Danny was beside her in an instant, his arm around her shoulders. "You did it," he said. "You actually did it." Looked at and her two hatchlings, she thought about the egg that had not survived and her heart ached, but she also felt something else. Pride, maybe, hope. "We lost one," she said. "You saved two," Danny replied. "That is more than anyone else could have done." Helen Park approached them, her expression complicated. "That was the most reckless thing I have ever seen anyone do," she said. "You violated every protocol in the book. You could have been killed." "But I was not," said. Helen shook her head. "No, you were not." She paused, then added, "For what it is worth, I am glad you did it. What you have done here tonight may have changed everything." Did not understand what she meant, but she was too tired to ask. She leaned against Danny and watched as nursed her children under the light of the rising moons. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight 2 lives had been saved, and that was enough. 6 months had passed since the night saved the eggs, and 4 was a different world. The news of what the human scientist had done spread quickly among the, passed from one to another through their ancient networks of communication. The story grew with each telling. A small human female had risked her life to save the children of a species that had shown her people nothing but hostility. She had kept her promise when no one else would have. They began to change their attitude toward the human colony. At first, it was small things. A hunting party that saw humans in the forest and did not chase them away. An elder who landed near the research station and watched the scientists work without threatening them. A young who flew over the colony and dipped its wings in greeting. Then came to speak with Helen Park. The colony administrator met thee in the field outside the main building, with standing beside her as a translator. His wounds had healed, though her wings would never be quite the same. She would fly again, but she would carry the scars of that night forever. I speak for my people, said. We have watched your kind for many years. We have seen you spread across the stars, taking what you want, destroying what you do not understand. We believed you were like the others who came before, the conquerors, the destroyers. Helen listened in silence. She knew they had good reasons to distrust other species. The galaxy was full of empires that had risen and fallen, leaving only ruins and tragedy behind. But we were wrong, continued. Or at least we were not completely right. Your kind is capable of great evil but also of great good, showed us that. She risked everything for children that were not her own. She kept her promise when it would have been easier to walk away. Is exceptional, Helen said. Not all humans would have done what she did. No, agreed, but she did, and that is enough. She turned her golden eyes toward. My people wish to offer you a gift in return for what you have done. We wish to share our knowledge with your colony, our star maps, our healing techniques, our history. In exchange, we ask for only one thing. What is that? Helen asked. Protection. There are others like others who would hunt us for profit. We are tired of hiding, tired of fighting alone. We wish to have allies. Helen looked at, then back at. This was more than she had ever hoped for. They had knowledge that could advance human science by centuries. Their star maps alone could open up new trade routes and exploration paths, and all they wanted in return was help against poachers. I will need to contact my superiors, Helen said, but I believe they will agree. Dipped her head. Then we have an agreement. For the first time in 1,000 years, they will have partners among the stars. Was given a new title, ambassador to the. It was a job she had never expected and never asked for, but it felt right. She spent her days learning the language, studying their culture, building bridges between two species that had once been strangers. Danny developed new translation protocols that allowed deeper communication. Through them, the humans learned that they had once ruled a vast empire that spanned half the galaxy. They had built great cities, developed incredible technology, and explored worlds beyond counting. But a devastating war had nearly destroyed them, and they had retreated to remote planets to rebuild in peace. For they had watched other species rise and fall, always keeping their distance, always protecting themselves. They had seen empires come and go, conquerors and liberators and everything in between. They had lost faith in the possibility of true alliance. Until now. Two children grew quickly. Within 6 months, they were the size of horses, with wings that could carry them across the sky. They were named and Myra. Myra was named after, a gesture of honor that made the scientist cry when she heard it. The hatchlings played in the fields around the colony, chasing each other through the grass, practicing their flying under their mother's watchful eye. Human children came to watch them, fascinated by these magnificent creatures that had once been so feared. Some of the braver ones brought food offerings, which the hatchlings accepted with what seemed like amusement. The elders came to the colony to share their knowledge. They spoke of stars that humans had never seen, of worlds that lay beyond the edge of known space. They shared medical techniques that could cure diseases humans had struggled with for centuries. They told stories of the old empire, of its glories and its failures, and the lessons they had learned from both. In return, the humans offered protection. Colonial security forces began patrolling territory, watching for poachers and traffickers. Had escaped off-world after the incident at the mining facility, but there were others like him. The black market for exotic species was vast and profitable, and the eggs were still valuable. But now they were not alone. Now they had allies who would fight beside them. One evening stood on a cliff overlooking the valley where the colony and the territory met. Below her, she could see human homes and nesting grounds, side by side. She could see and Myra playing with human children, their scales glittering in the fatting sunlight. Landed beside her, her great wings stirring the air. The looked out at the same scene, and something like peace settled over her features. "I never thought I would see this," said. "Our kinds living together, working together, it seemed impossible." "Many things seem impossible," said, "until someone tries." Turned her golden eyes toward. "Your kind is young. You have not been among the stars for long. You make mistakes. You hurt each other and you hurt others. But you also have something that many older species have lost." "What is that?" "Fire," said. "Not the kind that burns, the kind that drives you forward, the kind that makes you keep your promises when it would be easier to give up. We had that fire once. We forgot it over the long years, but you have reminded us what it feels like." Did not know what to say. She looked out at the valley, at the two species learning to live together, and felt a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the setting sun. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we build," said. "Together. We teach your young ones about the stars, and you teach our young ones about hope. We show you where we have been, and you show us where we might go. The galaxy is vast and dangerous, but it is also full of wonders. Perhaps together we can find them." Smiled. "I would like that." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You are strange, small and fragile and without fire in your breath, but you have changed the fate of two species with nothing but a promise and a stubborn heart." "That is what humans do," said. "We remind others what they are capable of." Dipped her head in acknowledgement. Then she spread her wings and leaped into the sky, soaring over the valley where and humans were building a new future together. Watched her go, feeling the wind on her face and the hope in her heart. She thought about the egg that had not survived, about the grief that would never fully heal. But she also thought about Myra, about the alliance that was forming, about the possibilities that lay ahead. She had made a promise and she had kept it, and because of that everything had changed. Below her, a human child laughed as Myra nudged her gently with a copper snout. Above her, the stars were beginning to appear, countless and bright, full of mysteries waiting to be explored. The future was uncertain. It always was. But for the first time in a long time it was also full of hope. And that was enough.